It is a joy to be here with each and every one of you, and we are thrilled and excited to have this to be our first official event of the Moore-Miller administration. So thank you all for having us here. We want to give a special shout to the University of Maryland, a special shout out to our students, all of our Terps who came through. A special shout to our President Pines. Thank you so much for having us, for hosting us here today. And also for Dean Orr, for inviting us to this wonderful state-of-the-art public policy building. This is a good day in Maryland. It's a good day. We are honored to be here at College Park. We are honored to be here in gorgeous Prince George's County, and thank you to our county executive also for hosting us here as well. It's a great day because this is an actualization of something that we've been talking about for a very, very long time. And we could not, frankly, think of a more appropriate place to be able to have this conversation and to make this announcement. Because during this entire campaign process, the Moore-Miller administration, the Moore-Miller campaign was, we'll get to that in a second, was very clear that we are going to move fast. And we're going to be bold. And we are going to be fearless. And we're going to make sure that in this moment that Maryland leads. And to be here in a place that understands what it means to be bold, understands what it means to be fearless, and understands what it means to lead is incredibly meaningful. Because throughout this process, we said that during our transition and for the Moore-Miller administration, there were a few things that were going to be true North Stars and guidance points for how we think about the work. We said that this is going to be an administration that looks like the state of Maryland. That this was going to be an administration that was going to be transparent, that this was going to be an administration that was going to be inclusive. And today we are proud to announce that that commitment and honoring that commitment, it starts now. And it starts now with the unveiling of the Moore-Miller transition and transformation teams and committees. And I could not be more excited to have here not just my partner in the work, our Lieutenant Governor-elect Wes Moore, but the person who I've asked to serve as the chair of the transition and transformation team. What you will see over the process of these next months is the first salvo, the first push, the first commitment to making the ideals that we laid out for the administration, that we're making them real starting today. And so we're humbled to be with each and every one of you. We're thankful that you all made the time. For the students, we're thankful y'all took some time off from classes to come out here and witness this. But I am extremely humbled and honored to be able to turn the microphone over to the chair of the Moore-Miller administration transition team, to our chair, our Lieutenant Governor-elect Wes Moore. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aruna Miller, and I am deeply honored to be the Lieutenant Governor-elect of Maryland. Thank you. And I want to thank Governor-elect Wes Moore for his vision to create a stronger, more inclusive Maryland, and for entrusting me with the critical role to be the chair of the Moore-Miller transition team. The Moore-Miller transition team will begin the people's work to help create a Maryland where we leave no one behind by elevating engagement and transparency. Joining me to lead this effort of the transition team are the co-chairs, Angela Also-Brooks, Prince George's County Executive, Shalonda Stokes, President of the Downtown Baltimore Partnership, Mary Tidings, Moore-Miller Campaign Treasurer, and Ken Ullman, a friendly face here on the campus, but also a former Howard County executive. What they each bring to this work collectively is a deep commitment to uplift our communities and elevate the ideas that move us forward. And helping us guide this work will be the executive director, Cleo Hirsch, a native of Baltimore, who previously served as executive director of the COVID response for Baltimore City Schools. She's fiercely committed to engaging, listening, and encouraging the participation of the community she serves. And I am confident that Cleo will continue the same commitment to the transition team. And finally, I'm excited to announce a transition steering committee who reflect not only the geographical diversity of our state, but they will provide an inclusive cross-representation of leadership from the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, as well as academic institutions. We are grateful for their willingness to share their time, expertise, and leadership. You should have a list of the members of the steering committee. In the coming weeks, the transition team will announce policy committees and its leadership that will focus on our shared priorities. And at the heart of advancing Maryland's priorities will be the opportunity for the public's engagement and participation. We welcome the feedback of all Marylanders who want to have a voice in the process. You can learn more about the transition and how to get involved by visiting our new transition website at www.moremillermd.com. Make no mistake, we will govern inclusively, proactively, and with great transparency. Once again, I'm honored to be your Lieutenant Governor-elect, and I am ready to get to work leading Maryland's transition to a state where we leave no one behind. And now, Governor-elect Wes Moore and I are happy to take any questions you may have.
You have just over 2 months until Inauguration Day. What are some of the key benchmarks that you would like to meet before the transition is officially complete?
So I think the idea is that we want to be able to create a team that's inclusive and reflective of the entire state. And as I said earlier, to be able to develop these policies that all Marylanders are going to benefit from. So I think that's one of the key things that we want to work on during this transition time, to really get the ideas from our state and Marylanders, because Wes and I always ran on the campaign that those closest to the challenge are closest to the solution. And we want to bring those solution makers to the table. We want to hear their ideas on how we can grow and thrive in the state of Maryland.
Lieutenant Governor-elect, you're going to have to come up with almost 5,000, 6,000 new employees to fill a number of agencies and secretaries and so on. Are you going to look internally? Are you going to look externally? Or are you going to do all of the above?
That's a great question. We're going to look holistically, and this has been a concern that's been raised to us as we traveled across the state of Maryland, how we're going to be able to fill the vacant positions right now in state government, as well as the leadership positions, whether they be cabinet members or working on commissions. We want a leadership, a state government, again, that reflects the wonderful diversity of our state. And the diversity comes from geographical location, as well as age, as well as race, as well as expertise, abilities, all of it combined. So we're really looking forward to doing that together.
And you're not going to rule out the fact that some people may not be.
We're not going to rule anything out. Again, we want to get the best and the brightest to be able to serve the people of Maryland.
What is it that the Moore administration is hoping to get out of having County Executive Angela also be on this team? What is it that you all believe that she will be able to bring to the process?
I'm sorry, can you say it I'm sorry?
What is it that you all were hoping that County Executive Angela also will bring to the process as a county executive?
Well, I think the county executive brings great leadership. She's a proven leader. She's committed to the state of Maryland, and you know, she has taken Prince George's County to the highest of elevation. I mean, this is one of the most successful counties in the state of Maryland, if not the nation. So we are really looking for her leadership as part of the transition. We're humbled that she's accepted this role.
I have a question. You mentioned, one of you, or both of you mentioned hearing input from people. What do the people want? Do you plan to hold any sort of like public listening sessions or actual ways for people to not just send an email and hope somebody reads it?
Absolutely. I think our goal is that the transition team, particularly the public policy teams that will be part of the team, will meet with the public and have town hall discussions, whatever that may be, so we can get direct feedback face to face. And like you said, in addition to electronic communication, because we know during COVID, electronic communication really served the community well. And particularly when people can't move and travel to the location where the public meetings may be held, this is another way in which we can complement the further involvement of the public.
Governor-elect, hi. So you have experience in state government, albeit in the legislative branch. How will that inform your work with the transition and building the new executive branch?
Thank you for that question, Pam. And yes, my involvement in the state legislature, I think, will help build relationships as we move forward. Because look, we're going to have to work directly with the Maryland General Assembly in order to be able to implement the vision that we have in the state of Maryland, and not just the terrific members of the General Assembly, but also local elected officials, community activists. We're going to need everybody to be able to create a Maryland where we leave no one behind.
Do you have a sense yet of how many public policy teams you have and what specifically they'll be? And is there kind of a deadline for the transition team's work? I mean, will it be done before the inauguration?
Josh, thanks for that question. So we do have some idea where the public policy teams are, but you know what? We're not an organization or a team that says this is it, we're not changing anything. We're always fluid and we're willing to take in new ideas. And if the community says, hey, you need to add another element to this, we are open to that. I know that Cleo will be working together to hear that feedback from the community. Thank you.
I know that there was a meeting this morning with Lieutenant Governor and the transition team. Were you a part of that meeting, and what can you tell us about the outcome of just this initial meeting?
Thank you. Yes, and while I was meeting with Governor Hogan, we also had the current administration's transition team meeting with some of the members who are going to be working under Lieutenant Governor-elect on that. And I think one of the big things that we have from that was it was just the foundation building that we're going to have about how that transition is going to take place, about how we're going to be doing with measures of transparency, information sharing, about how we're going to be doing analysis on the current departments and the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities that we have in the current departments, and how that's going to help shape how we're going to frame out the Moore-Miller administration.
Governor-elect, you talked about wanting to move fast and make some bold moves. Does that telegraph to voters that there's likely to be a fairly ambitious agenda in the opening days of the administration while the General Assembly's in session?
Yes. I think we've been transparent throughout the entire campaign phase, and I think one of the things that we saw on Tuesday night that the people have spoken, and the people are saying that we want to have a state that is going to move fast. We want to have a state that is going to be thoughtful. We want to have a state that's going to be bold. We want to have a state that's going to build and grow. We also just want to make sure that we have a state that's inclusive. And so you will see how the work of this transition team, the transformation, team that we have here within the Moore-Miller administration, how you will see how that is going to be reflected both in the work that's going to take place within the committees, and also how that is going to be moving in sync with everything we're going to have in preparation for inauguration.
Are there key policy points that you want to hit in the opening days after you're sworn in?
Well, I think we were clear about some of the things we wanted to be able to get done, and that we will get done in this next phase. When we said that we are going to push and move to make sure that we have a 21st century education system for all of our children, we mean that. You know, when we say that we are going to be a state that will have the first service year option for every single high school graduate, we mean that. When we say that our state can both be more competitive and be more equitable, and it's not a choice, we are going to do both, we mean that. And so you will see, as we're in preparation for the inauguration and the work that's taking place with the transition teams, you will see how we plan on actualizing all of those different frameworks.
I have a question. The four I haven't seen the list yet of the rest of your team, but the four co-chairs you announced, it seems like it's mostly people based in the Baltimore, Washington metro area. What if other areas of our state, more rural areas, Western Maryland, they don't feel included with the announcement they're hearing today?
Well, that's a great question. As a matter of fact, one of the co-chairs is from the Eastern Shore, from Talbot County, and that is Mary Tidings. So we were very specific about making sure that we had geographical diversity in the co-chairs. At this time, I'd like to bring up Cleo Hirsch, if she'd like to take a few questions, our new executive director of the transition team.
I have a question perhaps for you, Cleo.
Sure.
Can you give us an idea of, well, let me start with this. In the past, we know that people have been centered in Annapolis or perhaps Baltimore for their transition teams. Where exactly will you guys be located?
So we're still working that through. A lot of the campaign has been both virtual and in person and hybrid models. And so over the coming days and weeks, we're going to finalize, where we'll be operating out of. But we are getting to work right away.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, sure. So my name is Cleo Hirsch. I previously served as the Executive Director of COVID Response for Baltimore City Public Schools. And so I had the privilege of working alongside Dr. Santelises and Allison Perkins-Cohen, our Chief of Staff, to lead city schools through the pandemic. And we had a very robust pandemic response. We were lauded as a national model for the way in which we were able to, wrap health and safety supports and social emotional supports around our students and get kids back to school as quickly as possible. And I really plan to bring that organizational prowess and the ability to act quickly and also inclusively to this role. And I really look forward to building the most inclusive transition in Maryland's history.
This whole group has spoken of inclusivity, and I'm curious, how do you plan to include activist groups or advocates for many different issues, including the LGBTQ community? How does this transition team and this governor-elect team plan to do that?
That's a great question. So we're going to have 9 policy committees, and we'll be speaking more about those in the coming days and weeks. And we're going to make sure that those policy committees really touch on, issues like those that are very important to the LGBTQ community. And we're going to make sure we have inclusive teams that are representative of the diverse group of stakeholders we have across our state, and also that are representative of the deep expertise that we know is, in those activist groups and in people who are, living and breathing and experiencing those issues every day. Sure.
Hi, Governor-elect Moore, I just wanted to say congratulations on your historic victory.
Thank you.
And based on the question we just heard, how does this team, how are you all planning to center the voices of young people as you work to implement strategies to make Maryland a better state, the best state in the country?
That question was not teed up, by the way. I'm really glad you asked that, because one thing that we are very cognizant of is the reason that we are here is because of young people. It was young people who saw this campaign and who saw us before anybody else did. And we are going to make sure that it's the voices of young people that are going to be heard and that are going to ring loud throughout this administration and throughout the state of Maryland. In addition to the work that we are going to do, and we committed to things like how we are going to reenact and build the Governor's Office for Children, something that was in place, is no longer, but it will be in office here in the Moore-Miller administration. There's going to be distinct avenues and pathways for young people and students' participation inside of the transition teams as well. In fact, in the committees that Cleo was speaking about, there's actually frameworks for participation, for a voice. And again, it's not just that we need your voice, It's about we need your active participation in this, and so you will see in the coming days as we're having continued information about the steering committee, additional sports about the policy committees, and how again, this is going to be the most inclusive process that the state of Maryland has ever seen, where all Marylanders are going to have a chance to make their voice heard, and we are going to be explicit about asking and implicit about asking young people